Have you ever caught yourself thinking, I am bored in my relationship? What if I told you that boredom and routine might actually be one of the secret love languages that keeps couples together long term? Today, I'm going to share how embracing routine intimacy, micro connections, and small rituals can actually make your relationship stronger than ever. Stay tuned. We're going to dig in. Welcome to the Secret Formula of Femininity for women who want to live a more feminine, fun, and fabulous life. I'm Dr. Nicole Monteiro, your host on this weekly journey to unlocking your inner radiance, nurturing fulfilling relationships, and becoming the best version of yourself. Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host and guide on this journey to tapping into your feminine essence, Dr. Nicole. So, you know, we love a good story. And this topic came up from a discussion that I was having in one of my mastermind groups. Actually, we were talking about long term relationships, and one of the women said, my partner and I are just so bored. We kind of laughed, but then I pulled out the statistic I had just read about a study that said 25% of couples surveyed report that boredom, lack of communication, and routine intimacy are what's killing their relationship. And it got us and me thinking about how we need to pull boredom out from those categories and talk about it on its own, because not all boredom is bad. In fact, in therapy, I've seen countless couples come in panicked about, oh my God, we're in this routine. It's not the same as when we first started. But when you look closer, it's actually a sign of safety, security, stability, and strong attachment. The challenge comes in where it's trying to figure out how to engage with routine in a way that feeds connection as opposed to making you feel stuck or disconnected. So that's where we're going to dig in this episode. I also have countless examples. I was working with a couple. They have been married for 10 years, great couple, but they were convinced that their relationship was dead. And they had read something online that says, oh my God, if you're bored, this is a sign that there may be a problem with your relationship. And so they felt like every night felt the same. They were raising kids, they were working. But after we actually unpacked their, not just their routine, but their daily rhythms, what we found is that they had lost touch with their micro rituals. Those are the things that used to keep them emotionally connected. So things like small check ins, shared laughter, inside jokes, or even intentional eye contact, those nonverbal things. If you all are watching, you see my cat is here and he wants to learn about intimacy as well. But with this couple, once we worked with them and they reintroduced those small, predictable habits, they reported they actually felt closer. They thought it would make them feel more bored and disconnected, but they actually felt closer than ever. And so we kind of talked about and debriefed the lesson. The lesson is that boredom is not the enemy, loss of connection is, and the two are not synonymous. Sometimes boredom can be a pathway to actually having deeper and more consistent connection. Routine can actually be a superpower when it is leveraged correctly and in the right way. And many couples need help with this, and it's okay. So I'm working with them and just talking to the women in my mastermind. I discovered that there's a lot of myths that people have about routine and boredom. And the biggest myth, myth number one, is that boredom means your relationship is failing. The truth is that routine often signals safety and stability. There's a lot of attachment research, of course, with babies and development, but even in relationships. Bowlby talked about how predictability is a cue for trust and secure bonding. And that is essentially what you want in your relationship. So, boredom is not the enemy. Again, it's loss of connection. The second myth is that routine kills intimacy. And we've talked before about how couples and relationships, how we all have to straddle this balance or this line between wanting connection and closeness, but also wanting distance. And Esther Perel talks a lot about how you need a bit of mystery for eroticism and for attraction, but you also need connection and knowing and predictability. So it's not that routine kills intimacy, it's the lack of creativity. So routine intimacy does not have to be boring. Small acts of affection and micro connections where you're maintaining your sexual and emotional bonds are important. And many people are kind of having this myth and responding to this myth or this idea in their heads that it has to be mind blowing, amazing movie sex every single time. And if it's not that, because that's not what they hear about on social media or see in the movies, if it's not that, then there's something wrong. And so then there's this other factor that starts playing in each individual partner's minds and them as a couple, like, oh my God, we have a problem because we're just doing routine sex or intimacy. But routine intimacy is so important in maintaining that attachment, that bond and connection. We'll talk a little bit about the science of it. The third myth is that couples therapy is only for serious problems. So you need to wait until you're about to be divorced to get any help. The truth is that one thing that counseling and therapy can do for couples is help them to reconnect to or create these rituals and these routines and these communication patterns that actually prevent ongoing boredom and promote lasting attachment. So sometimes you need a little assistance, and it is okay. That investment in getting an outside person, whether it's the couples therapist, a sex therapist, an intimacy expert, to help you understand how to keep your connection alive, help you to understand the science of it all. So let's talk a little bit about the science of it. There's our brains are involved in it. In love and in intimacy and sensuality, sexuality, our brains are part and parcel to all of it. So there's this idea of looking at novelty versus attachment. The same way that we have to balance connection and closeness with separateness and a bit of distance, it's important to look at that balance between novelty and predictability. And we actually need both of them. Dopamine is what's spiked with new experiences. Released it's released in that reward center of our brain. So we're looking for a reward, sometimes for a short burst of energy or a short perception of a reward. So it's excitement, it's novelty, it's new experiences that are going to spike that dopamine. But then there's another set of neurotransmitters and hormones that are also important for love and connection, and that's oxytocin and vasopressin. We've heard a lot about oxytocin. That is what creates that initial bond between mother and child when the child is first born. But it's also important for couples, especially during sex and other times of physical and emotional affection. Vasopressin is really key for men in developing bonds and attachment. And there's been some research about how vasopressin increases for men as they're anticipating sexual intimacy. So there's a way to have the routine, but also to play on that anticipation that creates the bond and the connection. So both oxytocin and vasopressin strengthen attachment, trust, and long term boredom. And then those come about through routine intimacy. Routine intimacy may feel mundane, but you're actually doing a lot of good chemical work in your brain with it. It helps to it helps to boost the oxytocin, it promotes trust, it helps to create emotional safety and a deeper sense of love. And that's something that's more of a feeling. It's not something that you necessarily can measure, but it's a sense of euphoria, of bonding, of safety, of fulfillment that couples report. And attachment research also shows that predictable routines help to signal safety to the brain. There's a part of the brain called the limbic system that has a core structure called the amygdala. That is looking out for danger. And fear and anger are the strong reactions that automatically come from the amygdala. However, we also don't want that to be overactivated because we're always in a situation where we're looking for danger. Predictability helps to quell that part, and the part of our brain that allows us to be planful and thoughtful and really experience those more complex emotions, that gets to be front and center. So the predictable routines help to put down the sense of danger and help to increase the sense of trust and satisfaction, also reducing anxiety. And this is at the core of what helps people to feel satisfied in their relationships. If you ask people, especially women, what makes you feel safe? When we talk about femininity and all of the conditions that help a woman to feel at ease and at peace and be able to really lean into her feminine, it's also a chemical thing. It's also a sense of safety that's created in your relationship through predictability and routines. Studies show that couples who engage in small, consistent gestures, things like daily check ins, brief touch, walking by, touching, shared meals, eye contact, these people report higher long term happiness and sexual satisfaction. So sometimes it's the very thing that you think is boring and a problem in your relationship that is actually pouring into or making deposits into your relationship. And think about it, the safer you feel through these routines and these small ways of connecting, the more excited you are about creating more novel experiences, connecting with each other, being creative in your intimacy. But if you don't trust and you're not feeling like the other person is dependable or predictable or you feel safe with them, especially for women, that is going to inhibit your desire to really lean in. Now, I'll say this as an aside. A lot of times for women who have been through a lot of trauma, their nervous systems are primed to look for that spike in adrenaline or something that's going to say, hey, this is excitement, even if it's danger. So, for a lot of women that I've worked with who have been through a lot of trauma, whether it's in childhood or even in adulthood, especially with relationships, it's retraining their nervous systems to be able to tolerate boredom, right? Because sometimes people will think that boredom is a problem because it feels uneasy and unsettling to them in their bodies. So let's talk about some ways, some practical tips that you can actually make routine and boredom your secret weapon. One is micro connections. You know, if you listen to the podcast, I love everything micro. I feel like when you start on a small level, and I had a mentor who said, we do not respect small. When we when we start small and we accumulate wins, a few things happen. One, we get excited to keep going. And secondly, we start to accumulate the effects or the results. So you lift weights, you're not going to get buff on day one, but by month 4, you have accumulated on the work that you put in. And so micro connections are like deposits that you're making with your spouse and in your relationship. You can do things like send a 2-minute voice note in the morning or during a busy time of day. You can FaceTime if you guys are apart, but those voice notes, they have a little bit of mystery. You can put an emoji afterwards. It really creates that bond, but also that sense of desire and anticipation for seeing each other in person. You can send an affectionate text. Again, emojis are great. They can express things in a way that's both direct and subtle at the same time. You should have nicknames and pet names for each other. I know my husband and I do, and shared inside jokes, things that only you two get. And you know what's interesting? My daughter said to me recently, Mommy, your voice is different when you talk to Baba, to their dad, my husband, than it is, when you talk to me or other people. So I think she's picking up on the separate and distinct connection that a couple, a husband and wife, will have with each other. And she, I was like, well, what do you mean? She couldn't really say, but she's picking up on that because I do. I have a unique, playfulness or whatever at times with him that's between us. Another thing is doing check ins, 5-minute check ins. I hear people say all the time, we're so busy, I don't have time. You don't have time for a 5-minute check in? It's hard to believe. We scroll sometimes. We just get revved up on our scrolling in 5 minutes or more. So 5 minutes to do a daily check-in. You can ask each other. It can be in the beginning of the day, but usually mid to later in the day. How do you want your day to go? Or if it's later in the day, how was your day? What do you need from me tonight? What are you looking forward to in seeing me tonight? Right? Like it's saying we're connecting, it's asking for their input, but it's also, again, building up that anticipation, desire, and a little bit of excitement. These small check ins are a way to check in with each other's needs. They build emotional intimacy and they prevent resentment from building because you're not saying you're waiting until there's a big fight to really express yourself. Another thing to consider is a maintenance sex schedule. It doesn't have to be the exact day, but you also need to know that sex doesn't always have to be spontaneous. Planned intimacy kind of reduces the pressure while keeping the connection alive. You might have certain days where you might say, we're not going to go more than this number of days without having sex. For a lot of men, and it depends on the woman as well, that sexual connection is a love language in itself. So whether it's a specific schedule or a minimum, like unless we're sick or some extraordinary thing is happening, we are going to connect in this way. And again, it doesn't always have to be fireworks. Think of it as you're making deposits. If you have a little bit of money here and there, you can still put it in the bank. You don't have to wait until the big check comes, right? You can do it little by little. You can also openly communicate, discuss your preferences, things that you want to be creative about, your fantasies, fun date nights that you all can plan that end up in a really fun or unique way. These are things that you can discuss, and then it becomes a routine or a ritual that you all know that you're going to do together. Another thing is to celebrate the predictable wins. You need to be able to laugh at yourselves, right? Laugh at the mishaps, celebrate small milestones that you make together, or make small surprises part of your rhythm. Like, okay, every day, one day of the week, we're going to do this surprise thing. And that's a way of including or infusing novelty in small doses. Like, so it's fun and it's exciting, but it's not overwhelming. It's not something you feel like, oh my God, we can't have fun until we take our big vacation next year. You need to be infusing these things and putting these things in on a regular basis. So think about your relationship like a garden. Routine intimacy is the water and the sunlight. And novelty is like the fertilizer. It gives that extra boost. I love gardening and I love a good fertilizer. Both of them are essential, but routine is the engine that keeps it alive. You can't just keep your garden going with a few spritzes here and there of fertilizer. All right. So, I love this segment where I answer you all's questions, and we have some good questions today. Question one I got in my inbox is, I feel like routine is boring. How do I get my partner excited again? And this is really common. One is focus on those micro connections and those small rituals. Think about how excitement can come from emotional closeness and intimacy. It's not so much the act, but it's the intention and the effort that you put into it. So the more you're excited, and you put some effort into it, your partner is going to be excited too. The next question is, does scheduling intimacy feel forced? It depends on how you frame it. If you frame it as intentional care rather than an obligation, then it is something you look forward to and you see as an important part of your relationship. Predictability can reduce stress and boost connection. If you know you've committed to a certain degree or certain frequency of sex, that is going to reduce stress around it. Question number three is, what if my partner doesn't participate? I always tell people, be the change that you want to see. You have to learn to lead by example when it comes to making these shifts. Routine intimacy can start small, and it can be from consistent gestures that you make. And just do it for the enjoyment of it, not to say, like, oh my God, is he going to do it too? A lot of the research around attachment shows that when you lead by example, this encourages reciprocity or mutual like payback on your partner's part because they appreciate it and they want to return the favor. So I want you to remember that boredom is not the enemy. Routine is actually a love language. And by creating micro connections, daily check ins, and intentional intimacy with some of the tips we talked about, you can actually transform that predictability into deep, lasting love. This is the secret of long term couples that they don't really tell you about, they don't talk about. But I gave you the inside secret. If you want more tools to deepen your relationships, make sure you check out my book, The Boundaries to Bliss Blueprint, for women who are finally ready to win at love. And if you want a deeper community for women who are looking for healthy boundaries to tap into their femininity and have fulfilling relationships, make sure you check out my Inner Circle Community, the Boundaries to Bliss Society. The links for both of those are going to be in the show notes. Remember, relationships thrive in rhythm and in consistency. So let's make your routine in your relationship your superpower. Thank you so much for joining today. If this has been a benefit to you, make sure you leave us a comment on YouTube. Make sure you leave us a review on the podcast platforms and share this with someone, your partner, another woman, a family member who needs to hear this message. I will see you in the next episode. I'm Dr. Nicole.